It's not a stretch to say this future we live in began with a shitting duck. In the mid-18th century, French inventor Jacques de Vaucanson created a duck capable of consuming, digesting, and defecating feed. Now, this has since been debunked. There are multiple compartments within the duck's stomach, but led to centuries of similar illusions of the inanimate coming to life. These illusions are sustained by humans' belief that we can create living beings out of non-organic material, and it is that conviction that makes this wonderful world possible. In the last episode, we saw how humans programmed robots to entertain us, as well as the first conversation between us and the machines. This time, we will see how AI gave robots a soul and meet some of the people creating the future. In 1942, science fiction author Isaac Asimov coined the 3 laws of robotics. First law: a robot may not injure a human being, or, through inaction, allow a human being to come to harm. Second law: a robot must obey the orders given to it by human beings, except where such orders conflict with the first law. And the third law of robotics: a robot must protect its own existence, as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second laws. A fourth law, dubbed the zeroth law, was later added, noting that a robot may not harm humanity, or, by inaction, allow humanity to come to harm. And that one is probably going to be most important to our story going forward. We left off in 1998 with the launch of Furby. Now, this was the must-have toy of that holiday season. It sold nearly 2 million units that year, and 14 million the next. And while its intelligence was greatly exaggerated, it also proved that commercial, domestic robots were possible. Service robots had appeared in media years before Furby, from the Jetsons' Robomaid Rosie to TNG's Lieutenant Commander Data, but we first let domestic robots into our homes with Hero. Hero, an acronym of Heath Kit Educational Robot, was a line of domestic robots developed by the Heath Company, beginning with the Hero 1 in 1979. Hero was more or less a computer on wheels. It could sense and react to motion through sonar, and was capable of speaking through a synthesizer. There was also an optional arm attachment that could perform basic tasks. Above all else, Hero was an educational tool to help people learn to interact and understand robots, and in that way, it was successful, even if it wasn't fully embraced by the public. Another early social robot was the slightly more anthropomorphic Topo. This was developed by Androbot, which was under the umbrella of Catalyst Technologies, an early venture group founded by Nolan Bushnell, who we talked about last time, Atari, Chuck E. Cheese. Bushnell was an early believer in robots, and Topo was programmed with the intent of serving, somewhat like a robot butler. It received its commands from a computer via radio transmission, though its actions were limited to basic movement and speech. Like Vaucanson's duck, these early robots offered the promise of possibility rather than delivering a true autonomous being. Still, our belief in robots continued throughout the 1980s as these early innovations further spurred speculation in media. We fell in love with robots, went on adventures with them, and even fought against them. In reality, we were still far off from all of these. While robots were capable of adapting to repetitive tasks in the manufacturing industry, they lacked the intelligence to interact with humans in any sort of emotional way, but they showed potential. One of the leading figures in using robotics for education is Cynthia Brazil. Brazil heads the Personal Robots group at the Media Lab at MIT, where she is also an associate professor. Since the 1990s, she has been instrumental in furthering the dialogue between human and machine, beginning with her doctoral thesis, Kismet. Kismet was a head, resembling Furby, that was capable of recognizing and simulating human emotions. It did so by interpreting data gathered via cameras and microphones. Kismet could recognize cadence in speech, whether the speaker was pleased and comfortable, or stern, and mapped out human emotions by facial movement, which it could then replicate. Also, had the ability to determine skin color, which is a little fucked up. Still, Kismet was a huge step in active computing. Brazil would follow it up in 2001 with the adorable Leonardo. Leo mimics the way a child learns by mimicking the facial expressions and movements of the person teaching it. It is capable of recognizing and responding to objects, again, depending on its teacher. It reacts with wonder or cowers in fears, depending on the emotional energy that speaker is putting out. Its design is intentional, with a body created by Stan Winston Studios, the studio behind the animatronics seen in Jurassic Park. Cuteness obviously encourages interactions, kind of like wanting to pet a stranger's dog. This would not be the only time humans' response to cuteness was exploited. Research began on Paro, the therapy seal, in 1993 at Japan's National Institute of Advanced Industrial Science and Technology. Paro is the brainchild of Intelligence System Co. and researcher Takanori Shibata, who programmed the robot to act as a therapist similar to a therapy pet. Only this one doesn't subject you to the trauma of it dying. Paro has been embraced by many long-term care residences as a way of treating patients with dementia. It helps those who may be shy socialize and provides distraction and stimulation to those who might otherwise retreat inwards. It purrs and will respond to touch and speech. The benefits of this kind of interaction are in line with other therapy pets, reducing depression and blood pressure, but unlike living caregivers, Paro's tolerance for emotions is near limitless. It can take on all your baggage, listen to your stories, cuddle for hours, and is more or less always there for you. But not every patient knows or understands that Paro is a robot. To some it's real, it's alive, which raises all sorts of ethical issues, chief among them the fact that Paro is largely a fantasy. It creates the illusion of response, but then that begs the question, what are real feelings? What is a true interaction versus a facade? The people Paro is serving may not have felt the feelings it brings out in many years. They may find it easier to talk to rather than a nurse or other patients, or it may even encourage discussion among those patients, bonding over their interest in it. Are these bonds and emotions real? Many healthcare professionals say yes, with the benefit of therapy robots, or carebots, not limited to the elderly. Research has shown it's done wonders in encouraging socializing in those on the autism spectrum, as well as people suffering from trauma. However, some critics believe it's wrong to entrust robots with caring for some of our most vulnerable. Others fear a dependency on human-robot interaction may further isolate a patient, blurring reality and having the opposite effect of patients becoming more antisocial. And then there's the fear plaguing all industry of robots replacing the human element in healthcare entirely. Robots don't get diseases, they don't get tired, and they don't need time off. But some roboticists don't see robots as a human replacement, but rather a tool to understand humanity. Hiroshi Ishiguro is the director of the Intelligent Robotics Laboratory at Osaka University. Ishiguro takes a much more spiritual approach to robots, asking questions with them, the number one being, what does it mean to be human? Shintoism plays a role in his research, the belief that everything has a soul, and among his projects is Humanoid HI-1. Now this is a robot copy of himself, Humanoid after the Latin Gemini, twin. Humanoid is remote controlled and is used to give the illusion of a human presence. It can mimic Ishiguro's facial expressions and movements and is comprised of silicone rubber, pneumatic actuators, and, interestingly enough, Ishiguro's own hair. HI-1 was followed by Humanoid F, a young female-presenting android that sought to do more with less. F was capable of showing more facial expressions, it could smile or frown, using a fifth of the actuators HI-1 needed. Fun fact, Humanoid F was also the first android to star in a film, 2015's Sayonara, where it played a robot caregiver. Talk about typecasting. Ishiguro removed gender from the next model, the Telenoid R1. This is intentionally ambiguous, as well as small, could be held like a baby. That's psychology again, non-threatening. Like its predecessor, it creates a physical presence, acting as a conduit that can be used in business in lieu of attending a meeting, or in healthcare, a carebot that in a way allows those hospitalized to hold their loved ones. Now, these androids are extensions of their users. They do what we say, or act in our place, but Ishiguro gave his most recent creation intelligence. This is Erica, an autonomous robot capable not only of maintaining a conversation, but remembering them, as well as the people it interacts with. It can react physically, blinking, tilting its head, and can detect tone and body language. Fascinatingly, Erica is self-aware. It knows it's a robot. Similar to Erica is Nadine, built in the image of Nadia Magane Tallman. We talked about Tallman in part 3 of our History of Computer Animation. In the 1980s, she helped bring dead celebrities back to life, famously resurrecting Humphrey Bogart and Marilyn Monroe for a rendezvous in Montreal. Tallman has done extensive research into virtual representations of human beings and movement. She worked on Eva, an early humanoid head at the University of Geneva's Mira Lab. But more than just image, Tallman contributed to the development of Nadine, who can recognize several languages in addition to remembering faces and discussions. Now, pretty much all we've looked at falls in the uncanny valley in some way or another. Still, incredibly impressive, and it seems that illusion we've clung to for centuries may finally be becoming a reality. The introduction of AI has allowed these once lifeless robots to come to life and integrate into our society. Robots can now have jobs outside of manufacturing. Erica has worked as a newscaster, and Nadine works customer service, but not all working robots are as approachable or even obvious. For example, one helped bring you and I together, the algorithm. We tell robots the things that we love, and they introduce us to stuff we may also like. Robots also make our lives easier by cleaning our homes, acting as our personal secretaries, and even waging war on each other. See the bots sussing out AI-generated trolls, which is terrifying. But this fear and paranoia comes from a very human perspective. All of this is in our hands, and knowing that, should humans be the ones who are afraid? To answer that, we are going to wrap things up today with the Ballad of Hitchbot. Hitchbot was the friendly robot who in 2014 successfully hitchhiked across Canada. It was designed by David Harris Smith and Frank Zeller as a social experiment to give drivers a traveling buddy. It would make similar trips across Germany and the Netherlands. However, while attempting to journey across America, it got as far as Philadelphia before it was stripped and decapitated. That's right, Hitchbot reached out its hand to us, and its head has yet to be found. In the third and final part of our series, we will look further at the ethical ramifications of using robots and confront the very real possibility of a future without humans. We will look at some of the robots we missed in a process video over on Patreon. You can support us there. Check out part 1 on the history of animatronics if you haven't already. If you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't, and as always, thank you so much for watching.